All right, we're recording the session, folks. It's Friday, about 8 a.m. here. Prices of BTC currently at 10,281, February 14th. So you know what day it is. It's Valentine's Day, so it's time to tell someone special that you have been thinking about them or you care about them. Spend some time with your significant other. Show them that you appreciate them, okay? Okay, so today what we have is some interesting price action. All right, so let's start digging down from the 15-minute charts. Okay, so obviously, as we very well know, there's this huge massive movement, from here bottom up and then top down, right? Basically really just a big easy way of liquidation hunting on both ends. Again, it's really hard to figure out what this whole movement was about. um, but the way I would think of it is, for the most part, price gravitated back to, aside from ignoring this garbage right here, price gravitated back to this area that this first, push down brought it to, right? So we're still pretty much in that area. So if we're kind of just ignoring that stuff, right, all we're really doing is majority of our price action has taken place right there, okay? And we know that from our analysis, what is in that area? Well, we have this previous um, resistance right there now turning into support, right? So far, I mean, it's still doing its job holding that zone right now, but there's a couple different ways we can also look at it, okay? So we're sitting in this area. We've sat in it for a couple hours now, or not couple hours, but almost a day now, actually, okay? Um, Another way to look at this is kind of like this, okay? So I'm gonna draw this out. Actually, maybe I'll draw it over here because the chart is clear. All right, so let's pull this down, turn off the volume, okay? All right, and let's do this, okay? So from this particular high, right there, to this low, okay? And let me just adjust that just a little bit so we're perfectly there, okay? So from this high to this low, okay, this is the real 4-hour key demand structure, okay? This is really the larger picture at play that helped propel this move up, okay? So if we're really looking at this whole movement as a collective, the real trading range is between this high, 10,200, and this low, which is $9,700. And this movement up so far may seem like a deviation because all we really did was we went from this high to this low, pushed up, but then are coming back essentially inside the trading range. But for the most part, we're doing our best to stay above on top of this key high, okay? So far, it's really not, we can't call it a definite deviation because price is not going like this and then collapsing down under it, okay? Deviations are often held when price gravitates to one side or the other for a little bit of time, like this chart right here. I had shown you guys a couple days ago, right? When we went long right here, right? And we rode this thing all the way up. These little areas right here were deviations because we would see price moving in this area, quickly coming back inside the range. Price came down here, right? This was a longer extended deviation, but then again, this was held down because there was some reaccumulation happening, okay? So this allows people to keep shorting the bottom while there's passive longs being built. So sometimes the deviations are often just tricks to get people to aggressively keep shorting the bottom because they're also looking at this trading range as a whole, like we are, except most are not smart enough to realize when they're being trapped, okay? The whole game of trading oftentimes is really just a set of traps being laid for, the impatient, okay? And those that do not wait for confirmation, those that do not wait for the proper structure to be built or play out, okay? So luckily, in this particular area, we were not shorting, we were actually waiting. And once price re-entered the range, we longed, right? Because we understood that, okay, well, this could very well be a deviation because a couple of reasons, right? Number one, when price came back outside the range, all it did was put in a low, low, higher low, and it kept just climbing and climbing. And this was actually visible on EXO that there wasn't really a whole lot of volume going on over here. It was actually sellers who kept selling and selling, but the buyers just kept buying and buying. Okay, so to be able to recognize when there is a deviation versus a real sell-off is by far one of the most important things that you will learn about trading. And it takes experience, it takes time, right? So for this particular case, we cannot call this a deviation yet, okay? But the fact that price is not kind of, out once it started moving away and on top of this range, right? It should have just kind of came here and just started taking off, okay? The fact that price did not do that, and it consistently just sits here, basically on top of this previous range high, means that for the most part, I mean, we may break down a little bit further. Obviously, there's no confirmation about that, but at least for now, the fact that we're sitting here puts these highs at least in peril, meaning that we may not get to those highs anytime soon. At the very least, maybe digging in deeper here and then going back up, okay? Just given on the fact that we've basically spent, 4, 8, 12, 16, 24, 28, and about 29, 30 hours or so in this area. And you don't spend 30 hours just right here sitting on key resistance or key support, key demand structure, just to be able to kind of go like this. I mean, you might, but, as you guys very well know, in our community, right, we are short, right? We took a short yesterday. So if you look in this channel right here, BTC Swing Low Leverage, for those of you that are Advantage members, you can go check that out, okay? I'm personally thinking that we are going to have to retest a little bit deeper. And if we start looking at this as a trading range, we could say that, the EQ of this trading range is right around 99.50 or so, that area right there, the white dash line. So we could go as low as that, and we could go a little bit lower, okay? Now, if we're talking about lower prices, right, where could we start? Okay, so there's a couple different ways, okay? Some of the key variables that stick out to me, at least, is this 9,800 marker, okay? And the reason this 9,800 marker is important is because of a couple reasons. If we go back to a 15-minute chart that I just showed you earlier, right? Notice that I showed you guys this previous range right here, and this is where that Bitfinex shutdown had happened, okay? Right around this area, this is where after the shutdown, price just started rocketing like this. And so a lot of players, especially bigger whales and Bitfinex, probably were trapped in their positions right here, okay, when the shutdown happened, and this thing just took off. So if I was a whale, my goal would probably be to press prices back down to that same area to be able to consider closing out my short position, okay? And so that's one of the more fundamental factors behind that. Number two, this area right here, right, once we broke out up and away from it, we never came back to test as support and take off. Not that it's always necessary to test each area as support, but it's often necessary when it comes to key levels like the 9,800 marker, which if we start looking on this particular time frame, you can see it's the key POC, which is point of control, where a lot of this high volume transaction happened in this particular area, okay? So if price falls, it could find support right around that $9,800 marker, which is this red line. And you're probably wondering, what is this big, dark black line, right? Well, the black line is actually the volume weighted average price, the VWAP as people call it, right? Again, I don't use this often because personally I don't think it's necessary. I think you get enough analysis from your VPVR structures, just basic horizontal SR levels. But I wanted to show you guys this because there's a confluence of seeing price right around this 4-hour structure of this high volume node right here with the POC with this VWAP for the monthly. Now, VWAP works in a way where it gathers the volume as well as the price, and it gives the trader an idea of where is price in relation to where the average monthly value is, okay, for this particular asset. And because it's a VWAP monthly, okay, the VWAP monthly is actually telling you right now that the average price should be around $9,800. So its intrinsic values should be around $9,800 as per the VWAP, okay, given all the movement that's played out so far, okay? So if we are to say that, well, price could, potentially gravitate towards that area where the higher POC stands as well as the VWAP, it's a pretty significant drop. I mean, that's a $400 drop from where we are, and also the Bitfinex, shut down Confluence. So this is actually one of my big targets. If I see my short playing out properly, I would probably more than likely want to close out my position here, okay? Or at least take a significant amount of profit. Another area that I would like to close out is probably down here, where you see just this little blue box. And the reason being is because if you look over here, this wick just below that, this wick just below that, these wicks just below that, there's basically this space, right? And we call this, an area of resting liquidity. Basically, whoever went long here, 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 or even up here, if they wanted deeper stops, it'd probably be this big structure right here, okay? Because for the most part, I mean, this is really what propelled price all the way up here. So if price were to come to any spot and hold, it should be this, blue box around 9,600 and 9,650, okay? But we're getting ahead of ourselves, okay? So for the most part, we should be looking at 4-hour VWAP right there, as well as the point of control, which is around $9,800, right? Aside from that, like I've said, the 4-hour key structure right here, the demand structure, tells us that 99.50 could also be enough, right? 99.50, 99.60 over here, which is the EQ of this big demand structure, okay? Or for the most part, okay, we could essentially be done. We could be putting in these low, higher low, higher low, or this could be, your W bottom, right? Like this. So you can make the argument that this was your first bottom, this was your second bottom, and now you're, looking to take off. To be honest, I personally think that there was just a lot of sort of degenerate longing that happened in this whole move up. And I think people are still aggressively longing. And so when people are aggressively still longing, in my opinion, I personally feel that's the best environment for a bear to thrive in, because you want to, sort of cause a maximum amount of pain as price starts to collapse. Because the more you sort of build up structures like this, right, that means the more longs are collected. And that means that when price starts breaking through this key area right here, that means the faster it will accelerate down. Because remember, for the most part, when people are longing, they'll probably keep their stops just below these wick lows, right? And so when price starts breaking those areas like that, it's going to significantly accelerate price down, okay? So if we're simply looking at this as, say, a EW wave structure or a corrective wave structure, okay, we can make the argument that this movement right here was an internal, say 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 over here, and this could be a 5, okay? Actually, that doesn't make any sense. This would probably have to be a 1. This would probably have to be a 2. This would be a 3. This would have to be a 4 right there, or this would have to be a 4 right there. Because 4s cannot go below 1, so it'd probably have to be this structure right here. And then 5 would be up here, okay? So then we can map out, okay, well, if that's the case, this could be your A, your B, and your C is just starting to play out, okay? And you're probably wondering, oh, wait, the B actually goes above the 5, right? I thought I thought typically ABC structures were kind of like A, B, C, right? Well, in this particular case, we call these structures expanded flats. Okay, you can see right here, right? Irregular or expanded, I guess. Typically what happens is, you get the A, the pullback, or the B goes typically higher than the wave 5, and then the C you stretch down a little bit more, okay? So in this particular case, we can make the argument that if we're looking at this, mini parallel channel, the C wave could stretch down maybe towards that February 7th high, which is around 99.50, or February 6th high, which is around 98.90. And those come from these markers, okay? That's this key high right there and this key high, okay? I left those on the chart because I feel like they're pretty helpful. So anyway, let's go back to that, right? So we're back in that, EW wave structure, and so that C wave is pulling down here. And I'm going to show you the importance of that based on the 15-minute pivot structure. Okay, so here you go. Okay, so here we have it, right? We have that A right there, so A, B, and we're working on that C. So notice on the 15-minute chart, we are under the pivot consistently for the last, this is about 8 p.m. So about the last 12 hours, we have not been able to break above the pivot. Typically when this happens, more often than not, we'll probably head down to find support at the S1. And that's right around, 10,025, as you can see right there, okay? So if you're looking for smaller term targets for short positions, that would be your first one. If we're going a little bit deeper, then we're talking about $9,800. And guess what? S2, the $9,800 target, matches up with our monthly VWAP as well as our 4-hour point of control. So this target to me by far is probably the most important one. If we bounce off here, that's great, okay? Now, this is also where things get interesting. This is the 1-hour pivot structure. Notice that we got rejected off the R1 pretty well, right? But now we're kind of just floating in the middle between the R1 and the pivot. Now, I typically don't like when this kind of stuff happens. When you're floating in the middle, especially after rejection, I'm more often than not, I like to see price come back to find support at the pivot. And whereas the pivot on the 1 hour, again, $9,800. So there's a lot of confluence for me telling me that 9,800 could be that key level where price comes back and gravitates towards, okay? For the Advantage members watching right now, does that make sense? That makes sense, yep. Okay, awesome. And also, if you look at this descending parallel channel right here, you can make the argument that if this kind of slides down still, we can make it down here around the C wave over the next maybe day or so, right around $9,900, $9,850. Okay, so all in all, I mean, I think that 9,850 area would probably be the best bet for us to start looking at, potential confluence for longs or potential short targets. Okay. Crypto Lifestyle asked, learning about how to apply pivots. So yeah, I mean, it's very simple. Like I said, right? There's a indicator called pivots traditional, or pivot. I think it's called, the name of the indicator, I think it's called pivot standard. Let me look it up for you. Okay. Pivots, pivot, maybe it's pivot point standard. I think it's this one, but yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's it. And then I like to use, if you go into the settings right there, I like to use traditional. People sometimes like to use DM, classic, woody, Camarilla, but my particular style is much suited with the traditional. Again, like I've showed you guys, in my video, right? Over here, this video is online right now on YouTube. 10 Commandments, how to trade for a living. If you watch this video, most of this is actually about cultivating your own discipline, your own style. Okay, what basically works for you on a consistent, profitable basis. And so what I show you on a day-to-day basis is my style, right? My way of thinking, my methodology, my approach to the market. And so if you like it, of course you can follow it, right? But don't think that my way is the only way. I mean, there's many ways where people are successful. You know, as you guys very well know, I'm not someone who looks at a bunch of indicators. This is pretty much all I need, raw price action. Sometimes I'll turn on, the VPVRs, the Bollinger Bands, the cloud, etc. But it's really, that those indicators I use in confluence of what I'm already seeing. I don't turn those on and then those indicators tell me what to look for. Rather, it's the other way around. I look at what I'm looking at right here and I say, okay, these are the levels I'm watching. What other indicators are giving me confluence based on what I'm seeing? I hope that makes sense. Okay. So aside from that, I mean, if we start looking at EXO, right? So here's something about EXO, okay? Again, if you're not familiar with EXO, it's a footprint L3 data software, and it basically gives you a breakdown of the BitMax perpetual contract of how we look at each individual candle, where we see the major points of controls, where the majority of the volume took place, whether it's the bids or the asks on either side. Right side is the bid, left side the ask, meaning right side is the buyers, left side is the sellers. We look at these charts to give us an understanding of, well, where was the majority of price action taking place? And the darker the colors, okay, the heavier the volume and the movement happen. So you can see in this particular area, a majority of movement happened right there, okay, meaning a lot of the volume took place. You can see right there, 11 million bids, 14 million, 19 million bids, and 11 million selling, 17 million selling, 20 million selling. So these particular areas, the dark colors, are the ones that will probably more often, bring the price back, to gravitate towards it. So if we start looking on the daily, right, we could see the darker colors are, in a couple of different areas, right? Number one, this is one that sticks out to me. That's around 10,115. So notice right here, price comes back to that area with this wick right to that same area, and it bounces off that on the daily, right? Some of the lower areas, if we start looking at, other candles as well, is a little bit down here. There's some right around $9,800, and this one is around $9,790. So you can see in these two candles right here on February 10th and February 9th, a majority of the volume took place way down here, okay? So one could make the argument that if we are going to press down, say we broke through this key support area, these would be the ideal spots, right? 97.90 and about 98.25 or so. Again, I showed you guys earlier, VWAP is around 9,800. 4-hour pivot and point of control is around 9,800. S2 pivot for the 15-minute is around 9,800. So you can now see the confluence of multiple factors telling you that, hey, there's a lot of action, that's happening around $9,800. Might want to pay attention there, okay? So for the most part, to conclude, this whole analysis spiel, I will be looking at 9,800 as the big area, okay, to see if it holds. If it doesn't hold, then we're definitely in deep shit. That means we're probably going to go a little bit lower, probably around the $9,600 area, okay? But till then, I am short. I don't know if I want to be long yet. If I want to go long, I will let my community know, the Advantage members. I'll probably start looking above $9,350, maybe $9,400 to consider going long, but I definitely want some confirmation, okay? So anyway, folks, I hope you guys enjoyed this analysis. Oh, and by the way, you could see also right here, we keep consistently just hammering on this weekly open that opened last Sunday, So eventually, if you just kind of keep sitting there, I mean, this key support area is gonna break, there's no doubt to it, right? You can't just keep sitting on support and expect it to hold. The buyers are going to get, far and few and exhausted, all right? All right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you have any questions, come join the Advantage membership, folks. The Discord link is below. You can go to cryptosomniac.com, hit the products page, Again, I spend a lot of my time and energy with the Advantage members. The Advantage members will tell you that I'm pretty much up around 5, 6 a.m. sometimes, and I'm just out chatting with people and helping answer questions and helping people understand what's happening in the markets, whether they have questions about their positions or how to understand things better. My job is to essentially help you grow as a trader, grow as an individual in this market, because I personally see it fit as a responsibility that, I don't want you to, succumb to the same sort of fears and losses that most people do in the crypto space. This is one of the reasons why a few days ago, I cut all my positions, all my alt positions, right pretty much at the top, because there was just so much euphoria going on in the market that most people cannot sort of look outside themselves and their greed and euphoria. And so, right around 2 days ago, right, I told people that this would be a good area for you to start taking profit on Ethereum. Again, it's not financial advice, but it's my job to tell you that if it were me and I was holding on to, ETH long positions or ETH spot buy, I'd be looking to get out. Same thing with BCH. I told people to get out right into this red box. EOS as well, right? I got out of EOS right here. We made an amazing, 30, 35% move right here. So most of our positions, we ended up in profit, and profit is profit. But most people are probably wondering, well, I want more profit on my profit. And this is where the greed gets to them, because the greedy will never really learn, from their greedy ways. They'll typically, get trapped in the mentality that this thing could go higher. And so they start predicting into the future and they start thinking, how much more money could I make? Versus you can actually sell now, take profit, have money in your hand right now. Okay, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. What typically will happen is, this thing will kind of top off and it'll go like this, and they'll think that it's going to go higher and higher, and then it'll start coming down, and then they'll probably sell right here, but then it pushes back up, and then they'll probably buy back over here, but then it starts going lower, and they'll sell right here. Eventually, they'll pretty much, either break even or make small profit, or probably, more than likely end up in a loss. Because remember that in this particular space or in any trading, financial market, the typical percentage of people who are successful is less than 10%. There's no way that, there's so many people making money in this market and all of them are consistently making money. A majority of them will make money, here and there, but more often than not, they give it back to the market. Just like you do at a casino, you give it back to the house, right? Once you get really hot, really lucky, you get greedy and you give all that money back plus more back to the house. And the house, to me, is professional traders and bots and algorithms, okay? So if you understand how to control your greed, maintain your psychology, your emotions in this market, I promise you, you're not going to lose money, or you're not going to, lose your shirt, okay? But it comes with a lot of patience. It comes with a lot of, missing out on those extra gains, okay? But at least, you won't be giving your money back, all right? There's no thoughts on B-Trash. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's still sitting in resistance, this whole red block right here, unless it's like smashes right through the red block, right, with force, okay, and it comes back to retest that support, I would not touch it. All these major alts, folks, are approaching key resistance levels that they've held, since last year, okay? So this is no surprise that all the alts are kind of hitting these key highs, and people are getting still bullish, okay? They're not seeing the technicals behind why it's hitting this area. Again, I'm not saying that it can't go higher, but if it does, it's got to show you some major conviction, okay? It's got to show you that it's going to actually blast through, come back and test this as support, and then ready to push off higher. Because I promise you that if it does blast through and it comes to test this area of support, it's probably going to go much higher. It's probably going to go to $700, $800 or something. But buying here, not a good idea. All right. Again, not financial advice. Do whatever you want, but I personally would not. Okay. All right, folks. Cheers. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I will catch up with you guys later in the advantage side. And take care. All right. Have a good rest of your morning. Cheers.